Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast, where we focus on how authors found success, looking at strategies that have taken them to the top of the bestseller charts, as well as what they've learned from their mistakes. Because being an indie author is more than knowing the latest marketing trend. It's about being innovative and creative and learning from your mistakes.
Welcome to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. I'm Sara Rosette.
And I'm Jami Albright. And this week on the show we have
Angeline Trevena.
Yes, we do. And it was such a fun interview. She's so smart, but also just really fun to talk to. We talk about world building and just a lot of other things. It was really great.
Yeah, she's a discovery writer. She's the co-host of the Unstoppable Authors podcast. And I wanted to talk to both of the ladies. We just had Holly Line on the previous episode. And so they had an episode where they talked about being discovery writers. And I just thought that would be interesting to talk to her about that. So we get into that and how that's different and some of the myths around being a discovery writer. And, yeah. So we talked about that. It was really good.
It was great. It was great. We laughed a lot. It was a fun interview. It was a fun interview. Angeline also talked about writer events. And
that goes with what you've been doing, right?
I had a book signing this week, my first big book signing with Holidays with the Bells in Dallas. And Angeline talks about when you go to book signing or anything like that, if you just kind of have in your mind that you just want to sell one book, then you'll be a lot happier. And I sold one book as soon as the doors open, and I thought, okay, I'm good. But it ended up, I sold almost all of my books. It was really great. And it was awesome meeting readers and new readers. And I did something that I thought was pretty smart, if I must say so myself. I had cards printed up with a QR code on them, and it had my name and logo and everything. And then it said, for a free book, scan here. And so my freebie, all they had to do was scan the code. And if they took the card, they scan the code and they can get a free book. So if they didn't want to buy my books, which was fine because a lot of people didn't know me, they could get the free book. And my free book is very indicative of all my writing. So if they liked the free book, then they would like my other books. So that was pretty good. And I don't know that anyone else did that. I didn't ask, but the way they responded to, hey, you can have a free book was pretty exciting. So it made me think maybe that wasn't something that a lot of people were doing. So
it
was great. I was glad.
That makes it really easy to talk to people. It's really especially for me, like if you're an introvert and you don't really want to initiate conversations, it's awful to stand behind a table and be like, here, would you like to look at my book? I've done many events and, when you're trying to sell a traditionally published hardcover at $20+ that's a big ask. So if you can say, hey, here's something free, and if they like it, they'll go on to read your other books. So how did you do the giveaway? Like, is it a book funnel link?
It's a book funnel link. It's just my normal free book that's on my website, or whatever. But I used the book funnel link, and then I connected it to the QR code. And actually, on the back, there's another QR code that's supposed to go to my Amazon page, but it wasn't working, and I didn't figure it out until it was too late to get new ones. So they're sending me new cards, but really and truly, if they go to the free book, they're going to see my, all my books.
That's what the people were there for, books. Yeah. And so, like events, a lot of people will bring like candy and little like giveaway things. But if you're giving away a book, that is the most aligned thing you can do. So that's awesome.
Now, I did have cookies. Sugar cookies that had my, they were individually wrapped. Yes, that had my logo on it that a friend of my daughter's did for me. And they were so cute. They looked so good. But it was fun. My daughter and my mom were there. They were my hype men. It was pretty fun. I was not really sure that I would enjoy it. But I wanted to do it because I hadn't done one before, and I was so glad I did. It was great meeting readers. So
I had no doubt that you would enjoy it.
It was weird. It was weird being around so many people. It's funny because I was like, I didn't hang out in the bar. I didn't do any of that stuff because it was a little bit intimidating after not being around people for a while. So that was different, for me, but it was a lot of fun. What about you? What have you been doing?
Well, I'm still project managing the translations, and I had a conversation with another writer friend, and I did not realize how much time it would take. It doesn't seem like it would be that much. Like once you get it started and going, the actual translation part is easy. It's all the others, like getting the cover and everything translated. And so, I've been working on that. It's taken up more time than I thought. Been doing some writing, making progress, inching along.
Good.
And the other thing I'm working on is Historical Mystery Day is coming up this Wednesday, the 29th.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing that I'm more of an introvert. And so I'm like, hey guys, I feel very awkward, like reaching out to people and saying, this is going on. But I have reached out to some people. I'm doing some promotion. I also did a survey of readers, like leading up to this I guess I opened it up in January. So I've been collecting responses. So I've created these graphics that it'll give me something to post about that day and kind of share. Yeah. And it was interesting. I asked, what genres people like to read and what their favorite genres are, like what subgenres they like to read in historical mystery, and then what other genres they like to read besides that. Right. And I was really surprised, like romance and suspense were very high in the results, but also biography. And I was like, really? Oh, that's interesting. You wouldn't think that. But I mean, I guess if you're reading about historical things, maybe you're also interested in the nonfiction side as well. So
right.
Thought that's interesting. Cool. Yeah. So I'm working on that. And I now have trim painted in my office.
Oh, good.
And a doorknob.
So there you go.
So I can actually close the doors. So this is about the speed of our home improvement. It's going to be a long process.
That's so funny. Yeah, well, we're just plugging around. My daughter and my grandson moved out last week, and so as you can't hear him in the background, so that's been good for them, sad for us. We miss them, but they only live down the street. So, but still, it's different. So we're
a little bittersweet, huh?
A little bittersweet. We're proud of her and happy for them. So they're moving out. So I'm just about to start working on the next book and get things going. So
well, we should do a question of the week.
Yes, let's do.
All right. So since we're talking about world building and being a discovery writer, we could go either way.
Why don't we just ask, are you a discovery writer or are you a plotter?
Sounds good. And
that's pretty easy. Yeah. It's Monday. I have only had one cup of coffee. That's all you get, folks. That's all you get from me.
Well, that's can generate a lot of discussion.
Yes, it can.
Okay. All right. Well, here we go. Let's listen to Angeline.
Okay.
All right. Today, we're really excited to have Angeline Trevena with us today. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
We're so happy you're here.
And, thanks for having me.
Yeah. It's going to be a great episode, I know.
Yeah, we're going to dig into some good stuff that we haven't talked about before. So we're excited.
Great.
Yeah. So let me read your bio and we'll jump right in. Angeline Trevena is a British science fiction, fantasy, and horror author, creator of the Paper Duchess series. She is best known for her feminist brand of dystopia. She is also the co-host of the Unstoppable Authors podcast. Angeline grew up on the edge of Dartmoor, Devon, among its legends and ghost stories, but now lives in central England with her husband, their 2 young boys, and a somewhat neurotic cat. I think all cats are neurotic, right?
Ours is particularly neurotic.
Yeah, mine too. I told my husband last night that my dog and I have a very toxic relationship. I mean, like it's not healthy. And it's not because I'm like, oh, I love you so much. It's because he is, he allows me to pet him so that I can then give him a treat. That he's a cat dog. He really is a cat dog. Anyway, it's very unhealthy. But back to the podcast. So tell us how you got into writing.
So I'm one of those people who have been writing ever since they were old enough to hold a pen, pretty much. And I never really took it seriously. It was very much hobby. But I mean, I'm of the generation that, of course, self-publishing didn't exist until after I graduated uni, in fact. So yeah, it was always like something that I do just because I do it, just like I breathe. But it was always going to be a hobby. And it was actually at university when I did a degree in drama and writing. And I discovered that I was enjoying the writing side of my degree much more than the drama side. And I actually, for one of our writing classes, we had to write sort of like an introduction to ourselves as a writer. And I wrote, I would never see writing as being anything more than a hobby. And my tutor, her comment on it was, based on your writing, that would be a real shame. And that was sort of the first nugget, the first seed that was planted, that I was like, maybe I could do more with this. But it was several years later before I started. I actually started out with writing short stories for anthologies for like small indie presses. So that's where I started. And then I thought, I'll look at self-publishing, but it was still very much thought of as the last ditch attempt for desperate writers who couldn't get a traditional deal. Back when I've published my first book, but I thought, I'll see how it goes. I'll see if I can do it. And here I am several years later, full-time indie author, loving every minute of it. So
exactly. I think I thought when I put my first indie book up that I wouldn't feel like a real author, because I just remember the minute that thing went live, I was thinking, hell yeah, I'm a real author. Like, it was just the weirdest thing because I hadn't expected to feel that way, but it's legit.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. Bank accounts don't lie.
No, they don't.
The money starts rolling in. That's correct. Well, what's your definition of success?
My definition of success, I think, is something that always changes, because as soon as I hit one of my sort of goals that I was heading towards, I shift the goalposts and success becomes something else. But ultimately, it's rather vague. I'm quite a vague person. I'm not a solid goals kind of person, but like vaguely sort of, I've always had this idea that I would like to be able to just buy things without worrying, like to be able to walk into a shop and go, that's a really nice coat, and not even check the price label, just to walk up to the counter and buy it. And it's always kind of been in the back of my mind that like, when I can do stuff like that, then I know I've made it.
I think that's a great way to measure, like, because then it would show that those, like the financial aspects, that's not the major thing. And then it's just part of your life that you can do what you want to. So that's very cool.
Yeah, that's the really important thing, to be able to do what I want to, I want to be able to do a spontaneous trip out with my kids, and just not worry about the money aspect at all. So to me, like when I can consistently do that, and I'm not constantly checking my bank account.
No, I know. There was a time when my goal, it was before writing, but I would think, I will know that we have like hit a certain financial platform or place when I could, the tubes of Cover Up, like from CoverGirl and stuff. I would get a Q-tip and dig it out until it was all gone. And when I thought, when it's flush and can no longer be smeared on my face, I can throw it away and go get a new one. That's when I know we have made it. Isn't that funny?
I must admit, I do pride myself on my thriftiness. So I think I'll always be doing stuff like that.
Yeah, I still do too. Yeah.
Yeah. And like refusing to turn the heating on until at least November.
Just put a coat on. Yeah, exactly. Well, what do you wish you'd known about writing in craft when you started? Sounds like with a degree, you might have already known a lot.
I love doing my degree, and university was an amazing experience, but I kind of think of it in the same way as like learning to drive. You know, when you're learning to drive, they're not really teaching you to drive, they're teaching you to pass your driving test. And when you really learn to drive is after you've passed your test, when you're by yourself and just you're doing it through experience. And I think my writing degree was very much the same. You know, they were teaching me to achieve a degree in writing. And while there were a lot of things that I picked up, I've really learned to write since graduating. So yeah, one of the things that I was very late to the party on learning, and I really wish I had learned earlier, was about tropes and learning to write to market. Obviously, subconsciously, I was aware of tropes. You know that there are the same sort of themes and the same sort of characters that keep cropping up in the genre that you love. But I wasn't aware of tropes, like on a critical level. I did not know about tropes, and I didn't know about writing to market, and it's made it incredibly difficult with my fiction because I write these crazy mashups that they're like urban fantasy, but not strictly urban fantasy, because they're secondary world, which to a diehard urban fantasy reader, that's not urban fantasy. They're also a little bit cyberpunk because they have magic in them. So they're definitely fantasy, but they also have futuristic tech. And also they have monsters in them. And yeah, it's like, it's just this crazy mashup. And you try explaining to a reader, yeah, it's like urban fantasy, but not quite. And it's a little bit cyberpunk. And also it's set in a post-apocalyptic world. It's also very dystopian. And you've lost them. I've made a really hard job for myself by not writing to market. But even saying that, I now know about tropes. I now know about writing to market. And I still write crazy genre mashups. So it may not have changed anything if I'd even known about it before. So
well, our listeners can't see it, but while you were describing what it is you write, you had little lines between your eyes, like you were having to. And I'm thinking, wow, that's a lot. But you know, if it works, and you clearly have readers, so you found those people, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, I write what comes out of me.
So I've done that too, where I don't write to very specific, well-defined trope or genre or audience. You know, it's kind of a mashup of a couple of different things. And I found that the people who really like that series, they love it because it's their thing, you know? So like you can find really passionate followers, but the problem is that sometimes there's not a lot of them for that thing. But man, people who love it, they just love it. So obviously you really found your people if you can do that. Yeah. Well, what about marketing? What do you wish you'd known about marketing?
Oh, just how hard it is.
And
you know, it's not just the actual act of marketing that's difficult. It's overcoming the reluctance to market. That's been really, really hard. And because you get in your head, like, you know, like the cold sales calls that you get, or like the pushy people trying to get you to sign up for a credit card in the street. And that's kind of what you get in your head, what marketing is. And overcoming the reluctance to marketing, but then realizing also how hard it is and how so much of it feels like you're just shouting into the void. But something will be working somewhere. And it's so much experimentation and, I'll just tweak this one thing and see what change that makes. And sometimes it's like, oh, brilliant. You know, we'll keep doing more of that. And then sometimes it's like, whoa, no, put it back.
That's so true. So what kind of marketing do you do consistently?
Consistently, Amazon ads, I do constant, 100%. They have been an absolute game changer for me. And beyond that, it's just social media. I mean just free, using my social media accounts. I've never run a Facebook ad.
Oh, okay.
They sound very complicated. I haven't dared touch that yet. And I do run some Instagram ads, and they have been really, really profitable for me. But I will say Instagram ads really only work with certain books.
Yeah.
I can't get any traction on Instagram with my fiction, but my world building guides, there is such a strong author community on Instagram that my author guides, I know I sell them through Instagram, and every time I run an advert, it is profitable every time. But it's because I've found my audience, because I network with other authors on Instagram, but I cannot find the readers there. And so my fiction doesn't do very well on Instagram at all. But that's what marketing's about, you know.
Yep, exactly.
This works for this works for this. Let's try it out.
Exactly. So what assumptions did you make at the beginning of your writing career, and looking back, did they turn out to be right or wrong?
So I think a big assumption I made was that I would never make any money. We are fed this idea of the starving artist. And not only are we fed that that's the norm, that we should be a starving artist if we choose to go down a creative route, but it's romanticized so much to us that actually it's like we should be grateful for being a starving artist. And so, that was a huge assumption that I had in my head, that I would be a starving artist. And that certainly in self-publishing, when I first started out with it, it was very much, oh no, traditional published authors make money, self-published authors are hobbyists. And boy, has that turned around. And I love that it's turned around. And I'm so excited where indie authoring is going now, and how serious we're taking it, and how actually we're really, really savvy business people now. And I know that I am selling fewer books than some authors that I know that are traditionally published, but I'm earning more because I'm getting a bigger portion of my royalties. So that was a big assumption I made, that I would always be a starving artist. And thankfully, that's not happening. I am making a very good living from doing this now. So it can be done.
It can be. I think that traditional trad publishers are taking things now from indie authors, like their practices, and they watch and see what some of the really, now I don't think they would ever tell you that, but I think they do, because I've seen some things happen with some trad authors that I'm like, oh wait, you guys used to not do that, but now you're doing it. So but we've been doing it for a while. So
it's true. I've seen trad authors doing something, and I'm like, why are you talking about that as if it's some radical new idea, and us indies have been doing it for like a long time? But the pandemic has really, really made that happen a lot more, because obviously the trad pub model is so based on physical books, signings in bookstores, physical book tours, and all of a sudden this couldn't happen. I mean, a lot of trad pub books don't even have ebooks. Wow. They weren't even bothering to do ebooks, or it was just something the publisher would go, oh yeah, okay, I guess we should do an ebook, whatever. But suddenly the pandemic hit, and all the bookshops shut. They couldn't do live events. And so I think we've seen a big shift with trad pub looking at indie pub and going,
yeah, exactly.
Maybe there might be something there that we could use. I've even seen it with traditional authors, that their books are coming out closer together, because I write mysteries, so a lot of I've noticed a couple of authors that their books come out, only a month or two apart. And I was like, wow, that's different for them, especially because, normally it's a year at least, so I think they are picking up on some things, but I think we still have such a huge advantage as indies, because you may get a publisher on board to release your book, a couple months apart, but for them to consistently let you do that, or, I just don't see it. Or they may make that a pattern for all of their authors, but you just have so much more power and ability to control your own destiny yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
So, well, we like to talk about like lessons learned and, things that you wish you had known. So have you ever made a mistake that turned out to be a good thing?
So it wasn't specifically a mistake, but it was a bad thing that happened that I managed to turn into something fantastic. So a few years ago now, I was a guest author at a writing convention locally. And what we were allowed to do as guest authors was bring a few copies of some of our books to go on the sales table to be sold. So there I go with a bag on my shoulder full of copies of my books. Yeah, I'm going to sell loads. It's going to be really awesome. And so I took a whole load of books. I sold one book at the event and then had to go with my tail between my legs, pick up my book stock and then walk home with an equally heavy bag on my back that I had arrived with. And I got home. I was so miserable when I got home. I was like, oh, this is like the worst thing that could have happened. So I slept on it. I woke up in the morning, and now I'm a big believer when bad things happen, you're allowed to sulk about it. You're allowed to feel those feelings. They are completely valid, but only until the next day. So the next day I woke up and I only sold one book. I went, right, I've got a whole load of book stock that I need to do something with. So what am I going to do with this book stock? So a few days later, I went to my local library and I said, I would really like to put on a small event for like fantasy and sci-fi writers, maybe like 5 writers. I know so many locally that I knew I could pull this together. And the manager of the library got all excited and I got all excited. And all of a sudden, I was organizing a humongous science and fantasy convention. And we had Warhammer games there. We had D&D going on there. We've had cosplayers. We got a whole load of extra stalls in. We've done it twice now. Obviously, we couldn't do it once the pandemic hit. But both events, we had 2,000 people through the door each time. Wow. And I sold the book stock that I had and more. I sold plenty of books. And the first year the event was fantastic. The second year it was even bigger. I had to turn people away who wanted stalls and who wanted to come to it. Wow. And so hopefully we'll be able to do it again next year. Yes. And but that was a bad thing that I managed to turn around into something absolutely awesome.
That is amazing. That's amazing. I love it. Yeah. I love that story. Yeah. Well, I may be calling or getting back on a call with you because I'm doing my first signing next week. And I've already lost money. I know I'm not making any money on this, but I got a banner and I got these cards with the cute, what is that code thing on there? So they can get a free book and it takes them to my other books. And, I've sold some pre-orders, but I'm taking some books because it's my first signing and I'm like, I don't want to sit there like I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm sure I'm making my mom go with me because
that's a good idea. I make my husband go with me all the time.
Just sit here by myself. So I'm making her go with me. So at least we'll look like we're busy even if we're not. But I'm a little bit worried.
Awesome. That is awesome that you turned that into such a good thing. Yeah, that's great. I was traditionally published before I went indie, and I had many, many signings where I would go to Barnes & Noble, and basically all I did was tell people the direction of the bathrooms and where the coffee shop was because they weren't there for my book, I remember times that if I sold one book, I was like, thank goodness, one sale, just really, really hard.
So you really turned that around and made it something great.
So that is amazing.
Yeah, really.
Actually, an author that I know who came to the event, and he does a lot of events like this. And he said to me something that has really stuck, and I will keep it forever. He said, whenever I go to a live event, I aim to sell one book, just one book, and anything else I sell above that is a bonus. And that's really stuck. And every live event I go to now, I say that to myself. Yeah. I only aim to sell one book. Anything more is a bonus.
Exactly.
And it is. And it's such a good mindset to have. It's such a fantastic way to walk into a live event, because they are nerve-wracking, and you're like, oh no, what if nobody comes?
Yeah.
And it's impossible to know how much book stock to take as well. It's so hard because every event is different as well. And of course, time of year makes a difference, and so it's impossible to know. So that's a fantastic mindset.
That's a
go
great
into any live event.
Thank you. I will keep that in mind. I may make my mom come up to the table and act like she's buying a book, so
do it
to prime the pump, so to speak. Well, what about the opposite? Like, have you ever had something you thought, this is a great idea, but it didn't really turn out the way you thought?
I am such a sucker for shiny ideas. Yeah. Like, I get excited over anything that's new. And the amount of times I hear or see a marketing idea, and I'm like, clearly this is the latest thing. This is what I need to be doing. And the one that really... I've tried it several times and it just fails every time for me, is Facebook groups. And everyone says this is like golden mantra of Facebook marketing. Get a group, because you get much better engagement, you get much better reach. Yes, we all know our pages like don't reach anyone at all.
Exactly.
And so I keep making these groups, and they just go bleh. And I put this huge amount of time and effort into growing the group, into trying to get engagement, into thinking up things to post every day, which is so hard.
It's so hard.
Yeah. And I'm sitting there going, this is such a massive time suck, and I'm not getting anything back from it. And so I'm barely on Facebook at all. I have a page on there, but anyone who follows it will tell you, like, I probably post like it on a good month. I might post 4 or 5 times. I'm rubbish, but I don't mind, because I don't enjoy it on Facebook. And that's a mistake a lot of people make with social media. They're like, right, I need to be everywhere. Right, I need to follow these trends. I need to be here. I need to be here. No, you need to be where you enjoy being, because if you hate being there, people are going to notice that you hate being there, and your content's not going to be good. It's not going to be engaging, and it will feel like a huge time suck. I enjoy Instagram. Instagram is 100% my platform. I love it. I spend way too much time there. I'll admit. And so Facebook groups, they work for some people. I know they are absolutely fantastic for some people, just not for me.
Yeah. Sarah, you had a similar situation, didn't you?
Oh, I did. Everybody said, you need a reader group, create a reader group. That's good. And so I did. And it was like crickets in there. And I worked so hard. And I think part of it is my readers they skew a little bit older, and they are on Facebook, but they're not into going into groups and talking and chatting about certain things. I just couldn't. So I closed the group, and I haven't started another one. I haven't started another reader group. And I'm like you. I'm like, I just don't enjoy Facebook. And I think if you really, really, really try to do something and then you don't like it, eventually you just kind of I fall off a cliff. And I'm like, I'm there, and nothing, like I'm ghosting for 2 months.
You've ghosted me.
I ghosted Facebook. a lot.
100%. That's exactly what happens to me. I I do a survey of my newsletter subscribers every year, and also, just like you, my readers tend to be a little bit older. And yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, they are on Facebook. I know they are because they tell me that they're on Facebook, but they're not engaging, and they're not on it.
Right.
So.
Right. Well, and it's weird because like in my group, because I write romance, I think romance groups are a little bit different, but you know, I'll post about a book or a sale or something, and I'll get, you know, 25 responses or whatever. I post about, you know, ripping my pants somewhere or my dog puking on something, and I get 200 responses, and I'm like, this is so frustrating. Like, I get it. Y'all want to know about us, but you know, we have books too. You know,
yeah. So. For me, it's my cat. Pictures of my cat. Whenever I post a photo of my cat, I get tons of engagement. Post a photo of my book that's just been released, and it's like,
So you need to post the cat beside the book,
which I have also done that. Yeah.
I did do that the other day too on TikTok, because I wanted to use this one trend, and it was like, show me the baby, and all the other trends were either showing real babies or animals. And so I said, oh, well, my books are my baby, but my dog is too. So I propped the book up, and by the end he was side-eyeing me like, are we done yet? Like, I'm gonna hurt you when this is over.
Yeah, my cat actually hates having her photo taken. She knows as soon as I pick my phone up, she'll start cleaning somewhere that I don't want to take a photo of her cleaning.
She's got her back leg up, and
yeah, every single time. And I've got all these photos of her like looking absolute daggers at me. Like, why are you taking a photo of me? And yeah, so I have to take so many photos because she looks so awful in so many, because she does it on purpose. Right. But yeah, by the end, she's like, I am so fed up of this.
She's the Greta Garbo of cats, right?
No photos, please. Yeah.
She really is.
Oh my gosh. That's so funny. Well, so tell us about your world building. Like, did you start writing your books knowing what you know now about world building, or what have you learned over the course of time about world building?
Yeah, I'm a very much learn on the job, learn as I go kind of person.
As am I. Yeah.
And I mean, I've always been into fantasy. The like where my obsessive reading as a child really started was those choose your own adventure books, where you know you get to the end of the chapter and it's like, if you wanted the characters to do this, turn to this page. If you want them to do this, turn to this page. It was inevitable I'd end up writing my own. I think I love controlling the stories. And so I've always been into fantasy. I'm completely obsessed with Narnia. I read the Chronicles of Narnia, the whole series, when I was 16 in just a matter of days. I am completely obsessed with Narnia. And that was when sort of my love of world building really started. But everything I know about world building, most of it has been through reading, just reading, and through writing. And I think those are the best ways that we learn. I have become a lot nerdier about world building. So I do buy books about world building and read what other people are saying about world building. But the vast majority of it is through just doing it, through just practicing, finding out what works and finding out what doesn't. And I really think that is always the best way to learn. And so if you're buying world building books, and that's why my world building books, they're all workbooks. I do them as paperback workbooks. So you've got a prompt about a certain aspect of world building, and then you've got a whole space where you can write the answer. So you're doing because that is the best way to learn. And the other thing that the workbooks give you is, by the end, you've created all your world building, you've got it in one place, you've got it in one nice notebook all together in one place. So when you're writing your book, you've got it next to you. And because I learned about like world building and series Bibles the hard way. When I wrote my first 4-book series, when I was on book 3, I was literally picking up the copy of book 1 to look through it to find like the name of this character's wife's dog or whatever. And I was like, okay, there's got to be a better way to do this. So that was when I started doing series Bibles. So every single series I write, I have a notebook absolutely just crammed with all the information. And I'm still not great at updating it.
I know. I've got to do that I world build on a very small scale because it's small town rom-coms, but there are things you have to remember. And like this time, my editor said, there was a person named this in the last book, and you've now used this name 3 times for 3 different people in this book. I must really love it. And I can't even think what it is now. Oh my gosh. But it is hard to remember. But what I'm curious about, especially like for fantasy authors or urban fantasy or what you do, your mashup, how do you keep it in control? Like, how do you know when to stop world building? Does that make sense? Because
absolutely.
I've read books where it was almost too much. Like I want the story. I want, I like the world and I like knowing I like the magic system and all that. Cause I read a lot of urban fantasy and I read fantasy as well. And so, but how do you make sure you keep it contained so it doesn't overtake the story or integrate it in such a way that it is part of the story, I guess is the question.
This is probably the question I get asked most by people. Like, how much world building do I need to do? When do I stop world building? I understand it. I could world build forever. I really could, and never actually write the book. But I have 3 rules for world building. So everything you create in your world needs to do at least one of these 3 things. So it either needs to be revealing character, or it needs to be pushing the plot forward, or it needs to be exploring the themes of your book.
Oh, cool.
If it's not doing one of those 3 things, then you don't need it.
Right.
You are, I would say, every single time you world build, you are going to create more world building than ends up in your book. I create a lot more than actually ends up in
but that's good. Book. That's great extra stuff to give away to your readers.
It is, absolutely. You can package it all together, release your actual world building Bible as a reader magnet. It's fantastic stuff. Or if you've got loads of maps, you can print them out and do these giveaways.
Yes, exactly.
It's never wasted. It's never wasted stuff. And it helps you to understand the world better, which helps you to write in the world better. Right. But if you're now, you can put something in your world just because you think it's super cool. Like, absolutely. Just put something in just because you think it's super cool. It's exciting, like it's an exciting bit of tech or it's a really cool magic spell. Right. But then you need to integrate it properly. Yes. You need to, what I call it, backwards engineering. So you've got this item of world building you want to include because it's awesome, which is great. Shovel that awesome stuff in there. That's why we read fantasy.
Right, exactly.
But you need to backwards engineer it so that it's affecting your character or affecting your story or has relevancy to the themes of your book. Okay. Otherwise, it's just world building for world building's sake. So
very good. That's a great answer. Answer.
This is a good time. Tell us about your books that you have, because you have specific topics. Don't you have 4 world building books?
I do, I currently have 4 world building books out. So the first one is 30 Days of World Building, which is just a general catch-all world building book. So it will take you from having no world at all to having a complete world that's enough world building for you to start writing in. So if you're building your first world or you're building a brand new world and you've got nothing, then 30 days of world building is 100% where you want to start, because it will create your entire world. Then I've got 3 more specific books. Now, the second one I released, I actually started writing it at the end of 2019 and started writing it in 2020. It's called How to Destroy the World. And so it's about writing dystopia and post-apocalyptic.
That's
I
great.
I finished it just as the UK went into its first lockdown. And it was completely accidental, because I planned it and started writing it before we knew COVID was going to touch us.
Yeah.
But I finished it just as we went into our first lockdown. And honestly, I was like, do I publish it?
Yeah.
Like, what are people going to think if I publish this book? So I did it kind of quietly and apologetically, but people loved it. And it's sold really well. So then my third one is called From Sanctity to Sorcery. And that's a book which just guides you step by step through building magic systems and belief systems. So like religions. And then the latest one is How to Create History, which is about creating histories, myths, and monsters for your world, which has actually, like, that one has outsold the previous 2, and that is my second bestseller after 30 days. People are absolutely loving that book, which I'm really excited about, because
that's awesome.
I love monsters and I love myths, and I loved writing that one.
That was great. That's great. Yeah, I think our listeners will really get a lot out of it, because a lot out of this episode in particular, because because I write romance and Sara writes mystery. We've had a lot of romance and mystery authors. So I think this is fabulous. I just think that there's a huge portion of our audience that is going to really get a lot out of this. So that's great.
Of course, world building is for every genre.
It is.
It's like us fantasy and sci-fi writers might be doing like the heavy lifting. You also see a lot of world building in horror, but like if you're writing a cozy mystery, even if you're setting it in a real town that really exists, if you're creating a detective agency or if you're creating a cafe that doesn't exist,
right,
that's world building. Like, people don't often realize that it is, but it is exactly the same as world building. It's just on a much, much smaller scale than somebody who's creating an entire universe.
Right. Well, when you were saying those 3 things, I was like, okay, have I done that? Like with the cafe and with the barn? And it's just like, have I done those things? Because in my small little towns, there still are those elements. So that's really fantastic.
Yeah. At the end of the day, in your town, you wouldn't go and spend a lot of time describing a building that your characters never actually visit. So it's exactly the same as world building. Don't spend a whole load of time describing or explaining something that has absolutely no bearing on your characters at all.
I may be about to start a fight, but Aragon, I loved the first book of Aragon. I liked them all. The ending I did not like, but one thing, like he would lose me sometimes, like describing a door handle and the carvings on the door handle, and I'm like, I don't need, just go through the door. Like there's somebody in trouble on the other side of that door. Please go through it. But I just feel like, you can go too far, and
you definitely can, and it's a question of style at the end of the day. It is. Like I said, I started my career writing short stories, so word economy is like so ingrained in me. I write very short. My novels are only just 50,000 words. Most of my books are just tipping under that, so a lot of people would count them as novellas. But I write very stripped back. That's just my voice. That's just the way that I write. And that's what I prefer to read. I'm not into reading heavy descriptions of doorknobs.
Yeah. I don't know if it was. I think it was a doorknob. I really think it was a doorknob. I think there were carvings on the doorknob.
And some people love that, and that's good. That there are books for them. Yes. You know, I'll never ever write a 200,000 word epic fantasy because that's not my voice. That's not my style.
Right.
But there are plenty of writers who do. So that's great. You do
that's
that.
For them. Yeah.
It all works out because they have their readers.
Exactly.
So
Absolutely. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I feel like what Jami and I do is sort of world building light. And I didn't realize that I was world building when I first started writing mysteries. And then it dawned on me. I was like, oh, I am creating this. Even like I'll take places and I'll fictionalize them, you know, in my story so that I don't have to stick to, you know, the map and all this stuff. I can kind of do my own thing, but that is world building. And I think that a lot of the principles that you're talking about are very important no matter what you're writing. So I think that's great. So, but we also wanted to touch on being a discovery writer, because you had a podcast on your Unstoppable Authors podcast where you talked with your co-host about like being a discovery writer. It's something that's not touched on a lot, but so you guys are both discovery writers, right?
We are, yeah.
So kind of give us
Well, I mean, I am too, but I don't write what you write. That's amazing. Yeah.
So do you have any tips or thoughts for people who are discovery writers, you know, because there's a lot of information if you want to create an outline and follow an outline. And
there really is. Yeah. So. I keep wanting to buy craft books, like writing craft books, and I'll go through I always look at the reviews really carefully, because you'll often find reviews in there going, this is great for plotters, but it's no good for discovery writers. I've actually come across some reviews where they're like, this book actually like is horrible to discovery writers. I've heard it said so many times that discovery writers will never, ever finish a book. Well, I've published like 18 now, so that's not true. Yeah. People say all the time that discovery writers will only write bad books, or discovery writers are much slower at writing because they're making up as they go along. No, these are like huge myths. I want to bust them. It is sold to us so often that plotting is the correct way to do it, and discovery writing is just the one for people who don't understand plotting, or the one for people who can't be bothered to plot. I know how to plot. I've plotted some of my books. One of my books was plotted literally chapter by chapter. I had it written out. Most of the time I write to around about 15 to 20,000 words. My characters take over. My characters are incredibly wayward. That's how I like them, though. They're actually much better at coming up with ideas than I am. And so I let them run with it. So any plot that I've written out, anything I've planned, out the window by 20,000 words, completely gone. So if I plot, I spend a month plotting and then I write the book, which slows me down. That makes the process longer and slower. I am quite quick. I generally write a book from very beginning, from first word to publication in 3 or 4 months. So that's quite fast. You can't say that I'm being slowed down because I'm just
not at all.
Yeah. And we use the term discovery writer rather than pantser. I mean, for one thing, pants means something different in the UK than it does in America. So, but discovery writer sounds like you've actually chosen to do it, like it's an actual tactic that you have chosen to do, which it is. For so many of us, it is. Whereas pantser, it gives that idea of like, we don't know how to plot, or we can't be bothered to plot. So, but I will say, discovery writing, it is literally, I make it up as I go along. I really do.
Do you have nothing you have the idea, but
it's totally different. Every single project is different. So sometimes I'll spend 6 months world building just in my head while I'm writing other books. It's all going on in the back of my mind somewhere. And I'll start writing. all I'll have is the world. Sometimes I don't even have that. Sometimes I world build as I write. Right. Sometimes I'll have the ending in mind. Sometimes I'll have the opening scene. But I will tell you, I have started writing a book before with nothing more than the main character's name. That was it. That was all I had. I had no idea what was going to happen or where they lived or who their family was or anything. But that's what I love. I find that really, really exciting. I love first drafts. I know a lot of writers don't. They get lost in the first draft. They find it a horrible, sort of unnerving place to be. I love that we're all different. I love that all of us writers are totally different. I love first drafts. That's my happy place. That's my exciting place. I like to discover the world and discover the story along with my characters. And there are times that it doesn't work. Like I'll get to the 20,000 word mark, because that's kind of my mark. That's kind of where I know if this is going to work or not. And if my characters aren't taking over, then something's wrong. So yes, I have abandoned manuscripts, but so do plotters. This isn't something that only discovery writers have abandoned manuscripts. We all do. We all have hard drives full of things we've never finished. And maybe we'll come back to them one day, because I think a good idea is always a good idea. You might just have executed it with the wrong characters or in the wrong genre or with the wrong world, or it might just be that you're not meant to write that story right now. You know, that maybe you need to live a little more, maybe you need a bit more experience, or just the season isn't right. You know.
So I'm curious, do you find that if you know the whole story, like if you outline the whole story, does it make you do you lose some of the joy of writing it because you know where everything's going?
If I've outlined the whole story, I've done it, right? So but I've already done that. So to me, then writing my first draft is kind of a bit more like editing, which I hate. That's my least favorite thing. I hate editing. And I'm really jealous of writers who love it. And I know a lot of writers who editing is their favorite part. They're like, oh, but I get to like make it all pretty and sculpt it and take something that's a bit messy and make it really tidy. And I'm like, I want to love that, but I don't. So if plotting takes the joy out of the writing, because I'm not discovering the story as I go along. Now, when it's like, if I read a book, if somebody spoils the ending for me, I most of the time I abandon that book because I know the ending, and it just ruins the whole experience of discovering it. And for me, writing is exactly the same. But I really want to get out there that there is no right or wrong way. Excellent. You know, discovery writers aren't wrong. We're not lazy. We're not substandard. It's not the incorrect way to write. It is a chosen way that we find works best for us. And, you know, whatever works best for you, whatever helps you finish those books. Because if you're not finishing anything, then that's time to try a different strategy. But if you are finishing those books, if you're writing and finishing and publishing, do it your way. If, you know, standing on your head in a jungle writing is what works for you, then do it.
Exactly.
Don't let anyone tell you it's wrong.
I find that I love the thing I love best is what I'm not currently doing. Like if I'm writing the first draft, I really love editing and hate writing the first draft. And then when I'm editing, I'm like, I hate editing. I love the first draft. So it kind of goes back and forth for me. So tell us what you think you've done to set yourself up for success. What's the best thing you've done?
The 100% doing Amazon ads has been such a massive game changer. But I will say, again, there's always a but it is so much easier. I find it so much easier selling nonfiction than selling fiction. But I love writing my nonfiction. I love writing my world building guides. I'm very nerdy about it and I love it. So if that's what makes me the money, and it makes enough money that I can carry on writing my strange mashup fiction that's really, really difficult to explain to anyone, then I'm happy with that. Because honestly, if I wasn't publishing, I would still be writing fiction anyway, because that's just what I do. But yeah, Amazon ads have been my absolute biggest game changer. But you know, on the proviso that I wrote these nonfiction books, I hit this really specific niche. And I'm trying to change my language. I keep saying I'm really lucky in this, but I'm trying to change my language, because it's not luck. It is extreme hard work, and I work incredibly hard. But to have this one love, this world building love, is I'm incredibly fortunate that the range of books I can do is massive. I love talking about it. I can talk about world building forever. But the thing that surprised me about my world building books is they have been as popular with gamers as they have been with writers.
Very interesting.
Which never entered my head as a possibility. I have a lot of friends who do tabletop gaming, and they are hugely popular with anyone who's doing like role-playing games. And so that was another marketing niche that I went, whoa, okay. So that's why it's really important to be looking at what's working and then do more of it. So I'm market a lot to gamers, and it works very well.
So that is a very interesting tip.
Yes.
Your market may be something you're not even aware of. So that's great.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Well, we'll have all the links to your books and your website. Tell people where they can find you. Is there one specific place that they should go that would be the best?
Yeah. Just go to angelinetrevena.co.uk.com will also get you there. And everything is there, all my fiction, all my world building, and all my links to my social media.
Okay, sounds great. Well, we will have all that in the show notes, and those will be at wishidknownthenpodcast.com. And thanks to Alexa Larberg for editing and producing the podcast. And we'll see y'all next week.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Wish I'd Known Then podcast. We hope this episode inspired you, empowered you, and made you laugh a little bit too. If you loved it, tell your friends about it. And if you feel so inclined, leave us a review. We look forward to being with you again next week.